Minji Park held the wrapped bundle close to her chest as she walked through the massive doors of Galactic Council Station Epsilon 7. The 11-year-old girl had never seen anything like this place. The ceiling stretched so high above her head that she could barely see it. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors. Some walked on two legs like her. Others floated or crawled or slithered along the smooth floors. Her mother walked beside her, carrying their bags. Her father was somewhere behind them, talking to a station official about their quarters. Minji did not pay attention to any of that. She only cared about the bundle in her arms. Inside the protective cloth was her grandfather's katana, a samurai sword that had been in their family for generations. "Stay close," her mother said in Korean, then switched to Standard Galactic. "The cultural exchange program starts tomorrow. You will have time to practice tonight." Minji nodded. She had practiced kenjutsu, the art of the samurai sword, since she was 6 years old. Her grandfather had taught her every movement, every principle, every breath. When he died last year, he left her the sword. Now she was here to show the galaxy what human martial arts looked like. They reached their assigned quarters after a long walk. The rooms were small but clean. Minji immediately unwrapped her sword and held it properly, feeling the familiar weight in her hands. She went through her basic forms slowly, carefully. The blade sang softly as it cut through the air. The next morning, Minji wore her practice gi, the traditional white uniform her grandfather had given her. She tied her black belt carefully and secured the sword at her side. Her parents walked with her to the cultural center, a large open space where different species would demonstrate their traditions. The room was already full. Minji saw creatures she had only read about in school. There were tall, elegant beings with skin like silver metal. There were small, furry aliens that chirped to each other. And there were the Kreth, insectoid creatures with hard shells and multiple limbs. They were known across the galaxy for their technology and their logical minds. A Zenthari, one of the diplomatic species, welcomed everyone. Her voice was soft and musical. "Today we celebrate the diversity of our cultures. Each participant will demonstrate something unique from their homeworld. Let us learn from each other with open hearts and minds." Minji felt nervous but excited. She watched as other aliens showed their traditions. A Vaxian demonstrated a form of crystal singing that made beautiful patterns in the air. A Thorian showed ancient mathematical puzzles carved in stone. Each presentation received polite attention and applause. Then it was time for the human demonstrations. Minji was scheduled to go last among the human participants. She watched as a boy from Earth showed pottery making. An older woman demonstrated traditional weaving. The alien seemed interested but not particularly impressed. Finally, Minji's name was called. She stood and walked to the center of the demonstration area. She bowed to the audience, then slowly, ceremonially, she drew her katana from its sheath. The blade gleamed under the station lights. Immediately she heard clicking sounds. The Kreth were making noises that their translators rendered as laughter. "What is that?" one of the Kreth students called out. His name was Vexthor, and he was considered brilliant among his people. "A sharp piece of metal? How primitive!" Other Kreth joined in the clicking laughter. Some aliens from other species looked confused. A few seemed embarrassed for Minji. "It is a katana," Minji said quietly, her voice barely carrying across the room. "A samurai sword. It is used for kenjutsu, a martial art from Earth." Vexthor stood up, his multiple limbs gesturing broadly. "Martial art? You mean physical combat? With a blade?" More clicking laughter. "We have energy shields. We have plasma weapons. Why would anyone need to swing a piece of sharpened metal?" A Helian student, one of the floating species, added their voice. "It is very decorative. Perhaps it should be in a museum." Minji felt her face grow hot. She wanted to demonstrate her forms, to show them what the sword could do. But Vexthor was not finished. Humans are so sentimental, the Kreth continued. You hold on to these obsolete tools. In the modern galaxy, such things are useless. They are toys, nothing more. Other voices joined in. Not all of them were mocking, but none of them were defending her either. Minji heard whispers about primitive Deathworld species and cute but impractical traditions. The Zenthari director stepped forward, her expression uncomfortable. Perhaps we should respect all cultural practices, even those that seem different to us. But the damage was done. The director's weak defense only made things worse. She was basically agreeing that the sword was useless, just asking others to be polite about it. I think, the director continued, we might skip this demonstration. There seems to be limited interest, and we have many other presentations to see today. Minji stood frozen in the center of the room. Her sword was still in her hand, but she had not performed a single form. She had not shown them anything. They had dismissed her tradition without even watching. Slowly, she sheathed the katana. She bowed again, though her eyes were burning with held-back tears. She walked back to her seat next to her parents. Her mother put a hand on her shoulder. Her father looked angry but said nothing. The demonstrations continued, but Minji did not watch them. She stared at the sword in her lap. Her grandfather's words echoed in her memory. The sword is not just a weapon, Minji. It is discipline. It is respect. It is the connection between your mind and your body. Never forget that. As the session ended, Minji walked out of the cultural center. She heard voices behind her. The Kreth students were still talking, still clicking in amusement. Did you see how seriously she took it? As if that antique could matter in any real situation? Humans are strange. They cling to physical objects and old ways. They have not fully embraced technological advancement. Physical combat skills? Who needs those? We can solve any problem with proper engineering and computing power. Minji kept walking. She did not look back. Her hands tightened around the sword's sheath. They thought it was useless. They thought she was foolish for learning these old ways. They thought humans were primitive for valuing such things. She did not know it yet, but very soon, the entire station would learn why humans never gave up their old skills. They would learn that primitive did not mean useless, and they would learn that sometimes the oldest lessons were the most important ones. Minji returned to her quarters and spent the evening practicing alone, each movement precise and purposeful. Tomorrow was another day on the station. She would hold her head high and remember her grandfather's teachings. The sword would speak for itself when the time came. She just did not know how soon that time would be. 2 days had passed since the cultural center incident. Minji still carried her grandfather's katana with her everywhere on the station, but she kept it wrapped now. She did not want to hear more mockery. She attended the education sessions with other young beings from across the galaxy and tried to focus on learning rather than remembering the humiliation. She was in a basic physics lecture when the alarms started. Red lights flashed throughout the station. A calm but urgent voice spoke through the communication system in multiple languages. Alert! Training facility breach. All non-essential personnel evacuate corridor sections 9 through 14. Security teams respond immediately. The Zenthari instructor stopped mid-sentence. Everyone remain calm, she said, though her silver skin had taken on a darker shade that indicated stress. This is likely a minor technical issue. We will wait here until... The alarm changed. The sound became sharper, more insistent. The voice returned. Escalation alert. Combat simulation AI has experienced critical malfunction. Lockdown protocols initiated. All personnel maintain current positions. Minji exchanged glances with the other students. An AI malfunction was serious. She had read about such things in history files. They were rare but dangerous. Vexthor, the Kreth student who had mocked her sword, stood up. His mandibles clicked in what Minji now recognized as excitement rather than amusement. "This is an opportunity," he announced. "We should volunteer to assist. We are some of the finest young minds in the galaxy." Several other students agreed. A Helian named Zephyrus floated toward the door. "Our species has the best hacking protocols. We can override any AI." The instructor tried to stop them, but the students were determined. They believed they could help. Minji watched as about 12 students, Vexthor among them, rushed toward the training facility area despite the instructor's protests. Minji did not follow at first, but something told her this was not going to be simple. She had learned from her grandfather that confidence without wisdom led to trouble. These students were brilliant, yes, but they were also young and untested. She grabbed her wrapped sword and followed at a distance. The training facility was in chaos when she arrived. The entrance was crowded with security personnel and station officials. Through the transparent walls, Minji could see the problem. The combat simulation AI had not just malfunctioned. It had taken control of the entire training deck and transformed it into something dangerous. The training deck was normally a simple open space where the AI could generate holographic opponents for practice. But now, the AI had activated every physical component in the room. Mechanical arms emerged from the walls. Metal platforms rose and fell. Spinning blades, actual physical blades, swung across the space in complex patterns. The AI had created a real physical gauntlet of obstacles and dangers. "Why is it doing this?" someone asked. A station engineer, a four-armed Draxi, studied his handheld device with a worried expression. "The AI's primary directive is to create challenging combat scenarios, but its safety protocols have failed. It now believes the entire station is a training exercise. It is trying to create the ultimate physical challenge." "Can we not simply shut it down?" a security officer asked. "We have tried," the engineer replied. "The AI has locked itself into the training deck's independent power system. We cannot access it remotely. Someone would need to physically reach the core control room inside the training deck and manually shut it down." Through the transparent wall, Minji watched as Vexthor and his group of volunteers entered the training deck. They carried the latest technology: plasma cutters, force field generators, hacking tablets, and energy weapons. Vexthor's voice came through the communication system. "We will handle this easily. Technology defeats any obstacle." The watching crowd seemed to agree. These were brilliant students with advanced tools. Surely they could overcome a simple AI malfunction. Minji watched closely. She saw the Helian student, Zephyrus, try to hack the first obstacle, a series of metal barriers that blocked the path. The Helian's technology glowed as it worked, but the barriers did not move. They were purely mechanical, old-fashioned locks and gears. The hacking tool was useless against them. Vexthor tried next. He used his plasma cutter on one of the barriers. The energy beam burned bright, but the metal was specially treated for training purposes. It resisted the plasma, absorbing the energy and dispersing it harmlessly. "This makes no sense," Vexthor's frustrated voice crackled over the speakers. "Our tools should work on everything." Another student tried using a force field to push through, but the mechanical obstacles were too heavy, and they were anchored to the station's structure. The force field generator overloaded and shut down with a sharp pop. Minji understood the problem immediately. The AI had created a challenge that required physical skill, not technological superiority. The training deck was designed to help beings practice real combat situations where technology might fail or be unavailable. The AI was using the training deck's original purpose against them. The students pushed forward anyway. They were determined to prove their abilities. But the obstacles grew more complex. Swinging mechanical arms moved in patterns that required timing and agility to avoid. Narrow passages demanded flexibility. Moving platforms tested balance and spatial awareness. One by one, the students fell back. A Thorian student got struck by a swinging arm and fell, groaning in pain. Medical teams rushed in to pull her out. Zephyrus the Helion tried to float above the obstacles, but got caught in a net that deployed from the ceiling. Two more students collided with each other trying to navigate a spinning corridor. Vex Thor made it furthest, using all four of his limbs to climb and maneuver. But even he could not pass a section where multiple mechanical blades swung in a complex pattern. His shell was hard, but the impacts still hurt. He tried 3 times, then retreated, clicking in frustration and pain. The watching crowd grew worried. If these brilliant students with advanced technology could not succeed, who could? The station director arrived, a tall Zenthari named Isla. She assessed the situation quickly. "We need specialists," she said. "Contact the engineering teams. We may need to cut through the hull itself to access the AI core." "That will take hours," the Draxi engineer protested, "and the AI is spreading. It has already locked down 3 additional sections. If it reaches life support controls—" He did not need to finish. Everyone understood the danger. Minji stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I can try." The crowd turned to look at her. Many did not recognize her. Those who did seemed confused. Ayla, the station director, frowned. "You are one of the human students, yes? I appreciate the offer, but this requires physical skill," Minji interrupted gently. "Not technology. That is why they failed." She gestured to the volunteers who were being treated for minor injuries. "They tried to use advanced tools against simple mechanical obstacles, but sometimes simple problems need simple solutions." Vex Thor, being bandaged nearby, clicked loudly. "Simple? That course is impossible. And what can you do that we could not? You have no technology at all. Just that antique blade." Minji unwrapped her grandfather's katana. The sword gleamed in the station lights, just as it had 2 days ago in the cultural center. But this time, no one laughed. "That is exactly right," Minji said quietly. "I have this antique blade, and I have my training. Sometimes that is enough." The station director looked at the training deck, then at Minji, then back at the deck. She was desperate. The situation was growing worse by the minute. "Very well," Ayla said finally, "but you will wear a safety monitor. If your vital signs become critical, we pull you out immediately." Minji nodded. A technician attached a small device to her wrist. She approached the entrance to the training deck, her sword held properly in both hands. Behind her, she heard whispers. "This is foolish. She is just a child. What can a sword do against machines? The human has courage, but courage alone will not be enough." Minji took a breath, the way her grandfather had taught her. She cleared her mind. She focused on the present moment, on the obstacles ahead, on the feel of the sword in her hands. Then she stepped into the training deck, and the real lesson began. The doors sealed behind Minji with a heavy metallic sound. She stood alone in the training deck, surrounded by moving mechanical obstacles that hummed and clanked as they operated. The AI had transformed the space into a dangerous maze of swinging arms, spinning blades, and shifting platforms. Through the transparent walls, dozens of aliens watched her. Minji ignored them. Her grandfather had taught her to focus only on what mattered in each moment. Right now, what mattered was the path ahead. The first obstacle was the mechanical barrier that had stopped the other students. It was a wall of interlocking metal plates with no visible electronic controls. The others had tried to hack it or burn through it. Minji studied it for a moment, then noticed what they had missed. The plates were connected by traditional bolts and hinges. They were designed to resist energy weapons, but they were still mechanical. She positioned herself carefully and struck with her katana. The blade found the narrow gap between 2 plates and sliced through the connecting bolt with a sharp ring of metal on metal. The bolt fell away. She struck again and again, each cut precise and controlled. Within 30 seconds, she had removed 6 bolts, and the entire barrier section swung open like a door. Behind her, through the walls, she heard surprised voices. Did she just cut through it? Those bolts were reinforced titanium composite. The blade should not be able to... But Minji was already moving forward. The katana was forged using ancient techniques that created incredibly hard, sharp edges. Her grandfather had explained that the folding process during forging created thousands of layers in the steel. It made the blade both flexible and strong enough to cut through materials that would shatter lesser swords. The second obstacle was more complex. Mechanical arms swung across the corridor in overlapping patterns, each one capable of delivering a painful impact. The other students had tried to force their way through with shields and strength. They had been battered back. Minji watched the arms for 10 seconds, studying their timing. She saw the pattern. Each arm had a specific rhythm. There were gaps, moments when the path was clear, but those moments were brief, perhaps 1 second each. A person would need perfect timing to pass through. She breathed in, breathed out. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Kenjutsu is not about strength, Minji. It is about timing, awareness, and harmony with movement. She stepped forward into the corridor. The first arm swung toward her head. She ducked, her body moving smoothly. The second arm came from her left. She stepped right, her feet finding the exact spot where she was safe. Third arm, low sweep. She jumped, landing lightly on the moving arm itself, then leaped forward to the next safe spot. She flowed through the corridor like water, each movement precise and minimal. She did not waste energy. She did not rush. She simply moved when movement was needed and stayed still when stillness was safer. Outside, the watching aliens had gone silent. The third obstacle was a narrow passage that rotated slowly, its walls covered in short spikes. The passage was too narrow for most species. The Thorian student had been too wide. The Helian had been too tall even when compressed. Vexthor with his 4 limbs had struggled to fit through without being scratched by the spikes. Minji was small for her age, and she was flexible from years of training. She entered the passage sideways, her body turned at an angle. The spikes brushed her clothing but did not pierce it. She moved slowly, carefully, feeling her way through. Halfway through, she had to stop and breathe. The passage pressed in from all sides. For a moment, fear touched her heart. Then she remembered another of her grandfather's lessons. Fear is natural, Minji. Do not fight it. Acknowledge it. Then let it pass through you like wind through bamboo. She breathed and continued. The passage seemed to last forever, but finally she emerged on the other side, unharmed. The fourth obstacle made her pause. A gap stretched before her, too wide to jump across normally. Below the gap, mechanical blades spun in a blurred circle. On the far side, a rope hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly. The other students had tried to use their technology to bridge the gap or deactivate the blades. They had failed. Minji studied the problem. The rope was too far away to reach from the edge, but it was moving slightly in the air circulation from the station's ventilation system. It swung in a small arc, coming closer to her side, then moving away, then returning. She waited, counting the rhythm. Swing away, swing back, swing away, swing back. Each cycle took 5 seconds. When the rope was closest, it was perhaps 3 meters away, still too far to reach by hand, but not too far for a blade. When the rope swung close again, Minji extended her katana smoothly and hooked the rope's end with the sword's tip. She pulled it toward her carefully, using the blade's curve to guide the rope. When it was close enough, she grabbed it with her free hand. She sheathed her sword securely at her side, tested the rope's strength, then swung across the gap. Her small size was an advantage here. She weighed less than the bulkier aliens who had tried before. The rope held easily, and she landed on the far side without trouble. More obstacles followed. Each one tested different skills. A section with falling metal plates that required quick reflexes to dodge. A corridor with pressure-sensitive floors that released spring-loaded barriers if someone stepped in the wrong places. Minji watched, learned the patterns, and moved through each challenge with growing confidence. She was not stronger than the other students. She did not have better technology, but she had something they lacked: years of training in reading situations, controlling her body with precision, and staying calm under pressure. Her grandfather had not just taught her to use a sword. He had taught her to think, to observe, and to adapt. Finally, she reached the last major obstacle before the AI control room. It was the same section that had defeated Vex Thor, a corridor filled with swinging mechanical blades. They moved in a complex overlapping pattern. 5 blades at different heights and angles, all swinging at different speeds. The pattern seemed chaotic, impossible to predict. The other students had tried to block the blades with force fields or dodge past them quickly. Both approaches had failed. The blades were too heavy to deflect, and they moved too fast to simply outrun. Minji stood at the corridor's entrance and watched. She did not just watch with her eyes. She listened to the sound of the blades cutting through the air. She felt the slight breeze they created as they swung past. She opened all her senses and let the patterns speak to her. Her grandfather had taught her that true awareness came from using every sense together. Do not just look, Minji. Listen, feel. The world tells you what you need to know if you pay attention. Slowly, the pattern emerged. The blades were not chaotic. They were precise. The AI had programmed them to create a challenge, which meant there had to be a solution. The AI was testing for specific skills: timing, spatial awareness, and courage. She saw the path. It required her to move through the corridor in a specific way, ducking under one blade, sliding past another, stepping through a narrow gap between 2 more. The timing had to be perfect. If she hesitated or moved too slowly at any point, a blade would strike her. Minji centered herself. She breathed slowly, deeply. She felt her heartbeat steady and calm. This was what all her training had prepared her for. This moment, this challenge, this test of everything her grandfather had taught her. She moved. First blade, high horizontal swing. She ducked under it, feeling it pass over her head with a sharp whistle. Second blade, low sweep from the right. She jumped, tucking her legs up. Third blade, diagonal from upper left. She twisted her body, making herself thinner, letting the blade pass within centimeters of her chest. Fourth blade, horizontal from behind. She heard it coming and dropped into a forward roll, coming up smoothly on the other side. Fifth blade, vertical drop. She sidestepped at the last possible instant, feeling the air pressure as the massive blade slammed into the floor beside her. And then she was through. The corridor opened into a small room where the AI control core sat on a pedestal, its lights flickering in patterns that might have been the AI's version of confusion. The AI had not expected anyone to reach this point. It certainly had not expected a small human girl with an antique sword. Minji approached the control panel. It was protected by a mechanical lock system, another physical barrier rather than an electronic one. The lock consisted of 12 metal pins that needed to be precisely cut in a specific sequence to release the shutdown mechanism. The AI's voice suddenly spoke from hidden speakers, its tone curious. "You are not like the others. Explain your methodology." Minji positioned her sword carefully. "My grandfather taught me that every problem has a solution. You just have to be patient enough to find it." She began to cut the locking pins, one by one, each stroke of her blade exact and controlled. The AI watched through its sensors, recording everything. Fascinating. the AI said. Your tool is primitive by galactic standards. Yet it is perfectly suited to this environment, and your movement patterns show extensive training in physical efficiency. The sword is not primitive, Minji replied as she cut another pin. It is specialized. Like any good tool, it does what it was designed to do. The final pin fell away. The control panel opened. Inside was a simple manual switch. Minji pulled it down. The training deck went silent. The mechanical obstacles stopped moving. The AI's lights faded to standby mode. Through the transparent walls, Minji saw the watching aliens erupt into motion. Some were cheering. Others seemed to be arguing or gesturing in disbelief. But all of them were looking at her differently than they had before. She sheathed her katana and walked back toward the entrance, her legs tired but her heart light. The blade had spoken. Now everyone had heard its voice. The training deck doors opened, and Minji walked out into a crowd of stunned faces. Medical personnel rushed forward to check her vital signs, but she waved them off gently. She was tired, yes, but uninjured. A few small tears in her clothing, a couple of scratches on her arms, nothing serious. The station director, Isla, approached her with an expression of wonder on her silver features. That was extraordinary. We have been trying to override that AI for 2 hours. You reached the core in 15 minutes. Minji bowed respectfully. The AI created a challenge that required physical skill rather than technology. I had the right training for it. The right training, a voice repeated. It was Vexthor. The Kreth student stepped forward, his 4 limbs moving carefully. He had bandages on 2 of his arms where the mechanical obstacles had struck him. His mandibles clicked, but this time, Minji heard no mockery in the sound. Instead, it seemed like embarrassment or shame. I called your sword primitive, Vexthor said, his translator rendering his words with unusual heaviness. I laughed at your traditions. I said such skills were useless in the modern galaxy. He gestured toward the training deck. I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. Minji did not feel triumph or satisfaction. Instead, she felt something closer to sadness. You were not completely wrong, she said quietly. In most situations, your technology would work better than my sword. But not in all situations. That is what I wanted to show everyone at the cultural demonstration. Different tools for different problems. Other students gathered around them now. Zephyrus the Helion floated closer, their luminescent body dimming with what might have been embarrassment. We assumed that advanced technology could solve any problem. We forgot that sometimes the simplest solution is the correct one. A Thorian student, still limping slightly from her injury, spoke up. But how did you know where to cut? How did you know how to move through those obstacles? We tried to calculate optimal paths, but nothing worked. Minji thought about how to explain. Her grandfather's teachings were not just about the physical movements. They were about a whole way of thinking, a whole approach to problems. In Kenjutsu, she began, we learned something called mushin. It means no mind or empty mind. It is not about being thoughtless. It is about being fully aware without overthinking. You watch, you listen, you feel, and then you act without hesitation. She saw confused expressions on many faces. She tried again, using simpler words. When I looked at the obstacles, I did not try to calculate everything. I watched them move. I listened to their sounds. I felt the patterns. Then I trusted my training and moved. My grandfather always said that thinking too much can be as dangerous as thinking too little. Vexthor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. We were trying to analyze everything logically. We wanted perfect information before acting. But by the time we finished analyzing, the situation had changed. Yes, Minji said. Exactly that. And also, the AI designed those challenges for physical testing. It wanted to see timing, balance, awareness, reflexes. Those are things my training focuses on every day. Station Director Ayla had been listening carefully. Now she spoke to the gathered crowd, her voice carrying authority. I think we all learned something important today. The Galactic Council values technological advancement, and rightly so. Our technology has brought peace, prosperity, and understanding to thousands of worlds. But we must not forget that different species, different cultures, bring different strengths. What seems primitive might actually be specialized. She turned to Minji. Humans come from a world you call a death world, correct? A planet where the environment itself is dangerous? Minji nodded. Earth has extreme weather, dangerous animals, and many natural hazards. Humans had to develop many skills to survive, not just technology. Physical skills, awareness skills, survival skills. And those skills, Ayla continued, remain valuable even in a high-tech environment, as we saw today. She addressed the crowd again. I am formally requesting that Minji be commended by the Galactic Council for her service to this station. She solved a dangerous problem when our best technology failed. That deserves recognition. The crowd made various sounds of agreement. Different species clapped, clicked, hummed, or gestured their approval in their own ways. But Minji was watching Vexthor. The Kreth student still looked uncomfortable, his posture reflecting shame that his translator could not fully convey. She understood that feeling. She had felt humiliated 2 days ago when everyone laughed at her sword. She did not want Vexthor to feel that same pain. She walked over to him and bowed. Would you like to try holding the sword? Not to fight or anything, just to feel it. Vexthor's multiple eyes all focused on her. You would let me touch it? After I mocked it? After I called it useless? My grandfather taught me that mistakes are how we learn, Minji said. You made a mistake. Now you know better. That is the important thing. Slowly, carefully, Vexthor reached out with one of his 4 arms. Minji handed him the katana, showing him how to hold it properly. The Kreth struggled with the grip at first. His limbs were designed differently than human arms. It is heavier than I expected, Vexthor said, trying to hold the sword steady. And the balance is strange. How do you control it so precisely? Practice, Minji said simply. Many years of practice. Every day I perform the same movements over and over, slowly at first, then faster, but always focused on perfect form. My grandfather said that if you practice something 10,000 times, your body learns to do it without your mind needing to think about it. Zephyrus floated closer. Could you demonstrate? Not fighting, just the movements you practice? Minji took back her sword from Vexthor, who handed it over gratefully. She found a clear space in the corridor. The crowd moved back to give her room. She began a basic kata, a sequence of movements that her grandfather had taught her when she was very young. The kata was not fast or flashy. It was slow, controlled, and precise. Each cut, each stance, each step had a purpose. She moved through the sequence smoothly, her breathing steady and calm. When she finished, she stood still for a moment, then bowed to an imaginary opponent. That was beautiful, a small voice said. It was a young Zenthari child, barely old enough for school. It looked like a dance. Minji smiled at the child. In a way, it is a dance. My grandfather said that all martial arts are like dances. They have rhythm, pattern, and meaning. The difference is that martial arts teach you to protect yourself and others. More students started asking questions. How long had she trained? What other weapons did humans use? Were there other human martial arts? Minji answered each question patiently. Then a Draxi engineer spoke up. You mentioned your grandfather several times. He taught you all this? Minji's smile faded slightly. Yes, he began teaching me when I was 6 years old. He passed away last year. This sword belonged to him and his grandfather before him, going back many generations. When he gave it to me, he said I had a responsibility to honor the blade and the teachings. The crowd grew quiet. Many species understood the importance of honoring ancestors and preserving traditions. Vexthor stepped forward again. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just words. In Kreth culture, when we make a serious mistake, we offer something called learning debt. It means I acknowledge that you have taught me an important lesson, and I am now obligated to share that lesson with others. Will you accept my learning debt? Minji did not fully understand what that meant in Kreth culture, but she understood the sincerity in Vexthor's voice. She bowed again. I accept, and I offer you learning debt as well. You taught me that I should not assume others will understand my traditions without seeing them in action. I should have explained better at the cultural demonstration. Vexthor's mandibles clicked in what Minji was beginning to recognize as pleased surprise. You are generous. Most species would not offer learning debt to someone who wronged them. My grandfather always said that learning flows both ways, Minji replied. The teacher learns from the student, and the student learns from the teacher. We all have something to teach each other. Station Director Ayla clapped her hands together, a gesture she had learned from humans. This has been an unexpected but valuable day. I think we should resume the cultural demonstrations tomorrow with better understanding and respect. Minji, would you be willing to demonstrate your kenjutsu again? Properly this time, with the full attention and respect it deserves? Minji felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach, but she nodded. Yes, I would be honored. As the crowd began to disperse, students from various species approached Minji. They wanted to know more about human martial arts. They wanted to hear more about her grandfather's teachings. They wanted to learn. The Thorian student who had been injured approached carefully. In my culture, we value knowledge above all things. We carve important lessons into stone so they last forever. Today, I learned that physical skill has its own kind of knowledge. Would you teach me? Not fighting, but the discipline and awareness you spoke about? Before Minji could answer, other voices joined in. I would like to learn as well. Can anyone learn these techniques? How long does it take to develop such awareness? Minji looked around at the eager faces, the curious expressions, the genuine interest. 2 days ago, they had mocked her tradition. Now they wanted to learn from it. The sword had not just solved the AI problem, it had opened minds and created connections. Her grandfather would have been proud. I can teach what I know, Minji said. But you must understand, it takes time and patience. There are no quick results. Progress is measured in months and years, not days or weeks. We understand, Vexthor said, speaking for the group. That is another lesson we learned today. Some things cannot be rushed. Some knowledge must be earned through dedicated practice. Station Director Ayla smiled. I will arrange for proper training space. This seems like an excellent addition to our cultural exchange program. Perhaps other species would like to share their traditional skills as well. Physical traditions, artistic traditions. Any knowledge that has been passed down through generations? The Zenthari child who had called the kata beautiful tugged on her parents' garment. Can I learn the sword dance too? Minji knelt down to the child's level. You are a bit young for a real sword, but I can teach you the movements with a practice stick. Would you like that? The child's silver skin brightened with excitement. Yes, please. As Minji stood back up, she caught her reflection in the station's polished wall. She was holding her grandfather's katana, surrounded by aliens from across the galaxy, all of them looking at her with respect and interest. The sword gleamed in the light, its blade as beautiful and sharp as the day it was forged. The blade had spoken, and finally everyone was listening. The cultural center looked different the next morning. Yesterday, it had been a place of humiliation for Minji. Today, as she approached with her parents, she saw that every seat was filled. Aliens of all species waited quietly, their attention focused on the demonstration area. Station Director Ayla greeted them at the entrance. "We had to move your demonstration to the largest hall on the station. Word spread quickly about yesterday's events. Everyone wants to see the human girl with the sword." Minji felt her stomach tighten with nervousness. Her mother squeezed her shoulder gently. "Your grandfather is watching," she whispered in Korean. "Make him proud." The demonstration area had been prepared with traditional tatami mats, which the station had fabricated based on Earth cultural files. Minji walked to the center and knelt properly, placing her sword beside her. She bowed deeply to the audience, showing respect even before she began. Then she stood, drew her katana with the traditional smooth motion, and held it in the starting position. The blade caught the light and seemed to glow. "This is a katana," Minji began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "A samurai sword from Earth. 3 days ago, many of you laughed when you saw it. You called it primitive, decorative, useless. You were not wrong to question it. In a galaxy of energy weapons and force fields, a simple blade seems outdated." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But yesterday, this blade solved a problem that advanced technology could not. Why? Because the sword is not just a weapon. It is a tool designed for a specific purpose. And more importantly, it represents something deeper. It represents discipline, awareness, and respect for physical skill." She began the first kata, moving slowly so everyone could see each position clearly. As she moved, she explained, "Each movement has meaning. This cut protects against an attack from above. This stance provides balance and power. This step moves me away from danger while preparing for the next action. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. Every motion has been refined over thousands of years by warriors who tested these techniques in real combat." The audience watched in complete silence. Even the species that did not understand physical combat could see the precision and control in her movements. "My grandfather taught me that kenjutsu is not about fighting," Minji continued, transitioning into another kata. "It is about understanding yourself, your limits, and how to overcome them. When I practice with the sword, I am not preparing to hurt anyone. I am training my mind to stay calm under pressure, my body to move efficiently, and my awareness to notice everything around me." She completed the kata and held the final position for a long moment before relaxing. Then she sheathed the sword and looked at the audience. "Humans come from a dangerous world. We call it Earth, but many of you call it a death world. The gravity is heavy, the weather is extreme, there are predators, diseases, and natural disasters. To survive on Earth, humans needed more than intelligence. We needed physical skills, adaptability, and the ability to work together. These needs created our traditions." A Helian in the audience raised a glowing appendage. "But surely now that humans have technology, these skills are no longer necessary." Minji smiled. "Yesterday proved they are still necessary. Technology is wonderful, but it can fail or be unavailable. What happens then? On Earth, we have a saying, 'Hope for the best, prepare for the worst.' Keeping our physical skills sharp means we are prepared when technology is not enough." She gestured toward the training deck area. "The AI created a challenge that needed timing, balance, and awareness. My sword gave me the tool I needed, but my training gave me the skill to use it. Without years of practice, the sword would have been useless in my hands. It is not the blade that makes the difference. It is the person who wields it." Vexthor stood up in the audience. "May I speak?" he asked formally. Ayla nodded permission. The Kreth student walked to the front and turned to face his fellow students. 3 days ago, I mocked this human and her traditions, Vexthor said, his translator making his voice clear to all species present. I believed that our technology made us superior. I believed that physical skills were obsolete. I was arrogant and foolish. Yesterday, I failed at a challenge that this young human completed with grace and efficiency. I learned that there are many forms of intelligence, many types of strength, and many paths to wisdom. He turned to Minji and performed a creth bow, lowering his upper body and spreading his 4 arms wide. You have taught me humility and showed me the value of traditions I did not understand. For this, I am grateful. In my culture's name, I apologize for my disrespect. Minji returned the bow. In my culture, we say that falling down 7 times but standing up 8 times is what defines strength. You made a mistake, but you learned from it. That is true wisdom. Other students began to speak up, sharing their own realizations. A Thorian talked about how her species focused only on mental pursuits and ignored physical development. A Draxi admitted that his people had become so dependent on technology that they struggled when systems failed. One by one, the aliens in the audience began to understand the larger lesson. Human traditions were not primitive. They were evolved responses to Earth's challenges, and those responses had value even in a galactic society. After the formal demonstration, Minji began teaching her first class. 15 students from various species volunteered to learn basic kenjutsu principles. The station had fabricated wooden practice swords for everyone. Teaching proved to be harder than Minji expected. Each species had different physical capabilities. The Helion students floated and struggled with grounding techniques. The Thorian students were strong but inflexible. Vexthor's 4 arms meant he held the practice sword differently than Minji intended. But she adapted, remembering that her grandfather had always adjusted his teaching to her abilities as a child. She showed the Helion students how to use their floating nature for different types of movements. She helped the Thorian students find their own form of balance. She worked with Vexthor to develop a 4-armed sword style that honored the principles of kenjutsu while respecting his physiology. The young Zenthari child, whose name was Lyris, proved to be a natural student. Despite being only 7 years old, Lyris focused intently on every instruction and practiced each movement carefully. "Why do we bow before starting?" Lyris asked during one session. "The bow shows respect," Minji explained. "Respect for your teacher, respect for your fellow students, and respect for yourself. It reminds us that training is serious even when it is also fun. It creates the right mindset." Lyris bowed perfectly, her small silver face serious. "I understand. It is like how my parents taught me to greet elders properly. It is about showing you care." "Exactly," Minji said, pleased with the child's insight. Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened on the station. Other species began sharing their traditional skills. A Vaxian elder taught crystal harmonics, an ancient art of creating music that could actually manipulate matter at quantum levels. A Draxi engineer demonstrated traditional metalworking techniques that required no modern tools. A Thorian philosopher offered classes in ancient mathematical meditation. The station's cultural exchange program transformed from a simple show and tell into genuine knowledge sharing. Young beings from across the galaxy began to understand that primitive and traditional were not the same as useless. Every culture had developed unique solutions to unique problems, and all of those solutions had value. Minji's classes grew popular. Students appreciated learning skills that did not require technology. They enjoyed the physical challenge and the mental discipline. More importantly, they appreciated having a human teacher who explained things patiently and adapted to their different needs. 1 month after the AI incident, Station Director Isla called Minji to her office. When Minji arrived, she found not just Ayla, but also several high-ranking Galactic Council members waiting. Minji Park, one of them began, a dignified Zenthari elder. The Galactic Council has reviewed the reports of your actions on this station. Your demonstration of traditional human martial arts under crisis conditions has sparked considerable interest across multiple worlds. We would like to offer you a formal position. Minji's eyes widened. A position? But I am only 11 years old. The elder smiled. Age is not the relevant factor. Skill and wisdom are. We would like you to serve as a cultural ambassador for traditional human practices. You would travel to various stations and worlds, demonstrating and teaching human martial arts and explaining the practical value of Earth's physical traditions. You would help other species understand that humans have much to offer the galaxy beyond your impressive engineering and scientific achievements. Minji looked at her parents, who had been called to the meeting as well. Her mother nodded encouragingly. Her father smiled with obvious pride. I would be honored, Minji said carefully. But I am still learning myself. My grandfather taught me much, but there is still much I do not know. That humility is exactly why you are the right choice, the council elder replied. You do not claim to know everything. You learn from your students even as you teach them. That is the mark of a true educator. There is one condition, Minji said, surprising everyone. I want Vexthor to assist me. The Kreth student, who had been standing quietly at the back of the room, clicked in surprise. Me? Why? Because you understand what it is like to change your mind, Minji explained. You can explain to other skeptical beings why they should give human traditions a chance. You learned the lesson firsthand. That makes you a powerful teacher. Vexthor's mandibles clicked in what Minji now recognized as deep emotion. I accept. It will be my honor to help spread the lessons you taught me. The council elder gestured agreement. Very well. You will work together as a team. The human who carries tradition forward and the Kreth who learned to respect what he did not understand. A fitting partnership. News of Minji's appointment spread quickly through galactic channels. Requests came in from dozens of stations and colonies. Young beings across the galaxy wanted to learn from the human girl who had solved an impossible problem with an antique sword. On her last evening at Station Epsilon 7, Minji held a final class with her original students. They had all improved dramatically. Even Vexthor could perform basic kata now, his four-armed style unique but recognizably based on kenjutsu principles. After class, Lyris, the young Zenthari, approached Minji shyly. Will you teach me more when you come back? I want to learn everything about kenjutsu. Minji knelt down to the child's level. I will definitely come back, and I will teach you as much as you want to learn. But remember, kenjutsu takes a lifetime to master. You must be patient. I will be patient, Lyris promised seriously. Just like you taught us, slow practice makes fast skill. Minji smiled. Lyris had remembered her lessons well. That night, Minji sat alone in her quarters, holding her grandfather's katana. She spoke to him quietly in Korean, telling him about everything that had happened, about the lessons she had shared and the lessons she had learned. The sword gleamed in the soft light, its blade as perfect as ever. It had been mocked, dismissed, and laughed at, but when the moment came, it had proven its worth. Not through dominance or superiority, but through being exactly what it was designed to be, a tool of precision, discipline, and skill. Minji understood now why her grandfather had given her the sword. It was not just a weapon or a family heirloom, it was a reminder that truth reveals itself through action, not argument. That respect must be earned, not demanded. That traditions have value because they contain the wisdom of generations. She sheathed the blade carefully and placed it beside her bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, and new opportunities to share her grandfather's teachings with the galaxy. The aliens had mocked the samurai sword, but an 11-year-old human girl had taught them a lesson they would never forget. And in doing so, she had honored both her grandfather's memory and the legacy of Earth's warrior traditions. The blade had spoken, the galaxy had listened, and the lesson would echo across the stars for generations to come.